Okay, so we should be going. So we are now into my fall semester. It is 2019. Hooray! I realized that over the summer I didn't cover specific aspects, and that was part of the plan was to work on individual components eventually. If you want a basic overview of the rhetorical aspect of writing, I've already gone through that in another video. It says introduction, and it talks about Aristotelian rhetoric and a modern day version and different models we use when it comes to rhetoric. But let's talk about some of its components. But just as a real quick thing, when we talk about an aspect of writing, I break writing into 8 aspects of writing. This is the rhetorical aspect. There are 7 others, and they all kind of work together as a system and you can use it systematically. There are videos on that. But the rhetorical aspect of writing emphasizes how a writer accomplishes his or her writerly purpose. As I've said in past videos, just a quick overview, the traditional definition was Aristotle's, the art of discerning the real and the apparent means of persuasion. So that's cool. But that tends to put this overemphasis on persuasiveness. I've covered that in another video, when sometimes we have a variety of purposes or a different purpose altogether, beyond just persuading people, even though there are books like Everything's an Argument that say we're constantly trying to persuade. It doesn't always come out in the writing, even if that's true. A more modern day definition might be that rhetoric is the leveraging of discourse or patterns of understanding to accomplish a socially impactful communicative purpose. Whatever that purpose is, it's usually communicative. We usually want it to be meaningful, and it's usually socially oriented because that's how communication kind of works. So it's a writer leveraging what they know to accomplish their purpose. Okay, so that's kind of where that comes from. So some of the key components that I've mentioned in another video are purpose, exigence, topic, scope, stance, voice, visual design, genre, audience in its multiple levels, writing customs, and constraints or limitations. I'm not going to cover all of these in this video. I'm going to try and we're going to do this piece by piece here so that I don't go too long on any particular video, and you can just tell me it's terrible and leave faster. But there are many more components to the rhetorical here, but these are some of the ones that are most commonly associated with rhetoric or the rhetorical aspect of writing as writer practice goes. So first, there are 4. This main one's purpose, or one of the first main ones is purpose as a key component. We usually say there are 4 commonly acknowledged purposes: to persuade, to entertain, to inform, and to express. Now, 2 of these we would be more likely to connect with like an aesthetic aspect of writing, either personal expression or trying to make something entertaining, because our goal really isn't to do much more than make someone feel or experience something in those moments of personal expression or entertainment. So this is a rhetorical purpose, an intention of the writer, but it lies in the practices often more associated with what I call the aesthetic aspect of writing, that kind of personalized writing, or that writing to entertain and to make it fun and interesting, and that sort of thing. To persuade is part of that more traditional rhetorical definition. So anytime we're building an argument or anything like that, anytime we're trying to inform someone, that's then another purpose, and that ties to the scientific aspect of writing as I discuss it. But most important, when we think about purpose, we want to think of it as manifold or layered, not singular. It's rare that someone just wants to persuade. Usually we persuade, and as part of that, we also bring information that is actually meaningful, and that makes the persuasiveness more meaningful. Often, even if all we're trying to do, or if we primarily are trying to inform, most academic papers or most academic articles that you'll read will have some sort of conclusion or next steps or something or discussion at the end of the article that really pushes beyond just saying what this data is and says, but pushes into that persuasive. So there's always this back and forth balance of these multifaceted purposes that a writer might have. One of these values may take priority or may take preeminence, take that first role, but you want to remember that purpose has a writer has multiple purposes. Purpose is manifold as a component, and so further, writers will often need to balance or readjust their purpose or their settings on purpose based on other rhetorical components like audience or genre or that sort of thing. And so maybe it helps to think, in my classes I talk about purpose as almost like multiple dials. Even as we look at these four common purposes, it's important to know that there's sometimes you'll have a purpose that doesn't quite fit into one of these four, a very specific contextualized purpose that is separate from persuading, entertaining, informing, or expressing, or just more specific. But sometimes it helps to think of these as a purpose setting, almost as dial settings. And so maybe you've got a primary purpose, and so maybe you are trying to persuade people, and that's cranked all the way up. But to be effective at persuading a particular audience or through a particular genre, you might have to adjust the dials a little bit and crank up entertainment so that it's more interesting how you persuade, or crank up informative so that you're not just making a clean argument or being convincing or compelling, but that you have data that adds knowledge to your ability to persuade, convince, and that sort of thing. And so sometimes when I think about purpose, I'll use the example of, there's a dentist. He or she wants to make sure people know to brush their teeth. Well, we might have to zoom in on what audience and what genre he wants to do this in or for. And so if his audience is adults, we might approach it differently. You might use a genre of a pamphlet, an informative pamphlet. But if it's a 7 or 8 year old that that he or she's trying to convince to brush their teeth or help better understand dental hygiene, his writer purpose is to inform, but to inform that particular audience, he's going to also want to be a little persuasive and also be highly entertaining for a 7 or 8 year old audience. And so maybe he or she chooses a kid's book of some kind to connect with a 7-year-old. Well, that kid's book could take on a number of forms. Usually that's considered a more entertainment-heavy genre, but there's also a lot in kids' books and the genre of kids' books that is really informative. It's really just trying to encapsulate knowledge in a way that will be palatable to that audience. And so the writer, the dentist, is going to have to play with the dial settings based on his or her audience and based on the specific genre, because each genre has these kind of presets that we can adjust a little bit, but we can't completely ignore going into it, or audience expectations will be broken and it might be a less effective piece of communication. So instead of the dentist treating it like an informative brochure and saying, kids, it's important. See, here's a picture of your teeth. Here's a picture of your teeth rotting. That may be persuasive, but it may not be as entertaining. Instead, it may be informative and persuasive, but not entertaining, or it might even scare the children, which then might cause parents trouble and that sort of thing. So instead, maybe the dentist trying to balance the purposes for the audience and through the genre, along with his or her main purpose of I just want kids to know this is important, establishes a kid's story that is essentially a kid learning about brushing their teeth. And instead of it just being kind of here, I'm the narrator, I'm going to tell you why this is important, the story, we bring to life the floss and make it a character. We bring to life the toothpaste and the toothbrush and the scope bottle or whatever it is. And then we have a bad guy, the evil plaque monster or something, or a rotting tooth, though, depending on how graphic it is and the age you want to think about that. But we set it up into this story that students or children can begin to engage with, and so then it's their friends, the floss, the toothpaste, and the toothbrush, all helping tell the story, and while they're fighting the evil plaque monster, they help kids learn the necessary information and the importance of this particular thing. So if you can visualize that, and you can imagine a writer using pictures and vivid language and that sort of thing while still informing, while still persuading, that's kind of how this sense of purpose happens. The writer started out with a personal purpose, then filtered that through the particular audience and the genre that was most effective for accomplishing that purpose. So we want to be aware of these things and how they fit together as multiple components. And then the final thing I would say about purpose is that sometimes you you have your purpose, but someone else gives you some of those other components, and you don't have the ability to change them. Someone tells you to write in a particular genre, and you have to decide how much you fit in and how much you break the conventions or social norms of that genre. So there's a little bit of back and forth. Even if you know what your purpose is, even if you understand that the dials are adjusting, sometimes you have to decide which social norms to break for a particular genre, and sometimes you don't get to choose what genre you're writing in. But genre is another component that we will not discuss here. This is mostly about purpose. So depending on the genre, your purpose may be communicated directly, or it may be something that is more below the surface that readers have to draw out based on how you present the information, or how you present the story, or how you present the argument, depending on the genre. In an academic essay, purpose is going to be really clear and really very straightforward, usually for the most part, usually in some sort of main thesis statement if it's a traditional academic essay, though depending on what discipline you're in, it may move around. It may be in the first paragraph, or it may be in the discussion section at the end, depending on whether you're doing a case study or a traditional analytical essay or something like that. But as far as purpose goes, that's enough to get you a more advanced, more complex way of thinking about purpose, and not just I'm supposed to write an essay, or I'm supposed to do this thing. All writers have some sort of purpose. It may not always be to persuade. Sometimes it's just to get an idea out. Sometimes it's they really want people to know this thing because it seems cool, or maybe it's they want to present information and see what people do with it, or maybe they just want to be entertaining and tell a fun story and it'll be good. All of these things are meaningful. So with that, think about when you're writing, think about the different types of writing you do and how those things affect purpose. See it as a variety of dials that you can adjust based on your personal purpose, and then what your audience is expecting, and the genre through which you're trying to communicate that purpose. And have fun.